Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are. With Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is... yes.
Hard to tell in this fog.
I'll scout ahead and report. Someone is out there.
My master purged the Jedi Order and made himself the Emperor.
All right. I'm ready.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, your family-friendly, spoiler-free Star Wars podcast where intelligent conversation and a splash of humor bring fans together from across the galaxy. I'm your host, Dan Zayer, educator and Star Wars author. Whether you're a lifelong Jedi Master or just hopped off your first Star Cruiser, grab your calf and join us as we explore the mythology, philosophy, and wonder of a galaxy far, far away, one conversation at a time. Coffee with Kenobi is more than a podcast. It's a community. Together we celebrate the people, stories, and experiences that make Star Wars so special, creating a space where fans can come together and share their voices. Thank you to the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi, MEI Travel and Mouse Fan Travel. Check out coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel for a no-cost, no-obligation quote, and let them know Coffee with Kenobi and Dan Zayer sent you. We've got a great show for you today, the second show of Coffee with Kenobi this week. Dr. Gregory Cass and Greg McLaughlin of the Rebel Base Guard podcast join me for part 2 of our conversation of chapters 9 and 10 of Maul, Shadow Lord. So if you want to hear part 1, tune into the Rebel Base Guard podcast where I am able to join Greg and Greg to talk about these episodes in Rebel Base Guard podcast style. You will not want to miss it, so be sure to check that out and then come back and join us for part 2. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite mug, and let's have coffee with Kenobi. Hello, friends, and welcome to a truly monumental episode of Coffee with Kenobi. I am your host, Dan Zayer, and we are here to talk about the finale of Season 1 of Maul, Shadow Lord. We are talking about Chapter 9, Strange Allies, and Chapter 10, if I may say now that it's safe, The Dark Lord. So I'm bringing in two gentlemen. They are not Inquisitors. They are not Dark Lords. They are Jedi Masters in the world of podcasting. And for some reason, when I have them on, I always have them on together. And I never know which Greg I'm talking to, but I'm going to figure it out. First, from the World Base Card Podcast, Greg McLaughlin. Greg, welcome back to Coffee with Kenobi.
It's a pleasure to be back. I love having my my partner in crime, Greg Cass, here, and it's fun to always be on here because it's not my show, man. I can just be a yuck fest and then get tossed off, cast aside.
As you just demonstrated. It's great. Also joining us on the show, he's a man of many podcast hats. He is just the man of many cannons is now on Coffee with Kenobi once again, and we're happy to have him, Dr. Gregory Cass. Greg, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here. And, I already, in the first half of our episode, which I'm sure you'll explain in a moment, have already plugged your show. But I will just say it's a thrill for me, and it never gets old to be on the kind of best and brightest star in the Star Wars podcasting galaxy. So it's good to see you. I left Facebook for personal reasons. I just couldn't take it anymore. Literally, the only thing I miss is the CWK Alliance group chat. I'm like, I missed that group. So shout out to all the Alliance members who are on here. I still exist, and I'm out there in other parts of the internet, but you have such a wonderful crew, and I miss them all dearly.
Well, thank you for saying that. We definitely miss you as well and appreciate those kind words. Greg, by the way, is sporting a Coffee with Kenobi t-shirt, which I did not expect. That was quite a lot of fun. And speaking of a lot of fun, as you both alluded to, this is actually the second part of our conversation of the two-part Maul finale. Part 1 was on the Rebel Base Card podcast. It's an absolute must listen to because of the two of them, and I was happy to join them for the ride. And what Greg's format is if you didn't know, and if you don't already know, you should be subscribing to and listening to the Rebel Base Card podcast because it's just an excellent community of many of your friends that you will recognize, know, and love. And they come up with questions. and they throw them out to the group, and we have excellent conversations. So I've got leftover questions. I know these two gentlemen have leftover questions. We're gonna dive into those. We're also gonna get through a couple of other pieces of business. Let's start with you, Dr. Cass. Please give me. We're gonna separate them, Chapter 9 and Chapter 10. Please give me one word to describe Strange Allies.
I'm going to go with gobsmacked, which is me pretending I'm British. But, it's one of those slang words I've always wanted to use. But I will say gobsmacked at that first episode.
Oh, that's great. I want to give sort of an overall reaction to Chapter 9.
So I think as we kind of settled in to enjoy these two-parters, I think we were all expecting fireworks and expecting something big. And I will just say that it was absolutely shocking to me to get to the big reveal in this episode. And yet it wasn't just about the reveal. It was about the characters we've been with and building on their journey and finding our way forward. And, it's almost in the end hard to separate the two. And I think this is a case where the dual release really helped these two kind of feel a bit cinematic and a really special morning, evening, whenever people watched it.
That's a great way to describe that. Greg, what about you? One word to describe Strange Allies and overall reactions to the episode.
Boy, that's a tough one. And I would almost use the word desperate, because it's amazing how hard it is to get out of a city that is very locked down. I think the reveal at the end was something that was very unexpected, but I do like that they're forced to work together, but this is something that, I think everybody was on the table. You weren't quite sure who was going to be making it out of the end of this series, let alone this episode. But I do like the fact that there is a lot of stress on our characters, and I think they're desperately trying to get out of the city and make it to their one means of escape.
Love that. Yeah, that's and they even go down into the depths, right? In this tunnel over this acidic lake or body of water, and it's not a body of water at all, but there's a lot of symbolism here, and I've got some pretty smart people to help me kind of break that down. My word would be scintillating. This is quite epic, and I think this is what maybe people were hoping when they knew there was going to be a Maul series on Disney Plus, an animated series, because you get to see a former Sith, a Jedi Master, a very talented and astute Jedi Padawan, a couple of Inquisitors, and a surprise guest, which we'll talk about, in very peak form, in sort of a very rough circumstance. It's basically one long battle split up into two episodes, which of course we'll get to Chapter 10 here in a little bit. But it really is, it's quite breathtaking. And I would wager this is, and I really try very, very hard not to be a prisoner of the moment. But with that being said, this is one of the most spectacular end sequences of a Star Wars story in any medium that I have ever seen. So I guess we could really jump into the ending, but I don't want to do a disservice. I looked down at my questions and I made a big stinkeroo about let's break up the episodes 9 and 10. I just realized my last three questions are all about Chapter 10. Do either of you have any questions on Chapter 9? Because I can definitely think of some on right now, but do you have any?
If you don't mind, I do have something, and that might be pertinent. Something I think that we haven't seen maybe to this effect in an animated series. How do we feel about the Stormtrooper body count? Because whereas in Bad Batch, that Greg Cass and I and you on occasion have gone over, a lot of stunning going on, but here we see legions. It seems go down. How do you felt it added to the style of the show? What's at stake? Obviously it's very cool that they're Macquarie stormtroopers. I like the design. It's a nice carryover from Bad Batch. But I really felt that so many of them met their maker that it was like, is it notable at all, or am I just does it go along with, or how do you feel about it?
I think it adds to that darker tone that it just kind of puts this level of violence across it. I will just say my son and daughter did not choose to watch this show with me, but I think it might have given me pause if they were in the room seeing the body count add up. But to the kind of I always think the Star Wars prequels got away with a lot of violent acts because it's clone troopers versus battle droids, right? And you can tear apart a battle droid and it doesn't feel as violent and isn't as violent. It's not just a feeling. So there's a little of that going on. So when, the Knight brothers meet their end at different times, those feel a little more personal. So just a huge body count across the two episodes. But I think it's okay that Star Wars is, a little darker at times, a little more violent. I think there are moments in the Clone Wars television show that are far exceed what we saw here. So I'm okay with it. But that was probably mostly because my kids were choosing not to be in the room.
So notable, important question. And my youngest, of course, Mason, he wasn't a huge fan of the series. He only watched a couple of them. And I think, I don't know if it was because of that per se. It could have been. I think it was just because this is a very different animated style than, not only visually, which is, of course, absolutely stunning and gorgeous. Every frame you could hang up on the wall and be very happy with your purchase or the framing quality itself. But this is a linear story. I said before it aired, when I was able to do like a quick tease on social media, that this is not Andor, but it's more like Andor than any Disney animated stuff, because there's a different level of darkness, of cost, and the way they're telling the story. It's not episodic in any way. So, and I was also noting the body count, and I think it has to be that way because Darth Maul is that person. He is that guy. That is how he lives his life. And if you want us as an audience to feel the punch of Maul and his power and his raw brutality, which he really tames down in this series, just because he's sort of in less of a position of power, even though he's definitely climbing the other direction. I think it had to happen. I won't say this is an animated thing for adults, but I would also say in the same breath that it's not really for kids either, just because it's got some heavier stuff going on. So I think that was an essential part of the entire thing. See, that's why you should listen to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. One of these guys or their wonderful guests come up with a cool question, and these are the kind of conversations you have.
More questions than answers. That's the slogan of the show.
That's right. Put that on a T-shirt.
Well, and I will jump in and just offer my one. It's not even a real question, or it's a Chris Farley show question, which is like that sequence over the acid lake and the leaping. That was cool, wasn't it? I mean, that was just some great action, and so it's just noting that it's kind of hard at this point in Star Wars to show us something that's really truly different than everything we've seen before, and that definitely ranked for me as one of the cooler action sequences we've seen.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and it reminded me of something from a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. For sure, you've got this lake of acid, and someone has to roll with reason or some sort of a investigative thing to find that little skiff to roll out there. And at first they say you can't jump all the way across this thing because the ceiling is too low. Even for us, it would be impossible. So they figure out a way to get across. And I feel like every way each of them gets across might be symbolic of their characters. And I think you could really explore that in a great fashion. I don't have to watch it again to sort of reconfirm what I think. But maybe that would be my question. What symbolically would you glean from seeing how each of them crosses?
Oh, somewhere Tom Gross is crying now.
I found myself thinking of that old brain teaser. Is it a bag of grain, a goose, and a fox? And you got to take, you can only fit one in your canoe. And how do you get all three across? But
right.
Symbolically, I think to me, what surprised me the most is that in those moments, Maul felt a little more Jedi because he was a team member, right? And he was trying to block the shots and be protective of the whole crew as they got across. And so to me, that was a little symbolic of, I was not sure Maul is as bad as he's meant to be, right? Like, I mean, we've seen now a little bit of flashes back to his childhood where has suffered for so long. And I kind of wondered, like, oh, maybe there was a good guy in there. And then, no, probably not.
What do you have to... I have to almost channel Spock from Wrath of Khan, like, as with all things, each to their gifts. I do like the fact that, you know, Spybot gets a little bit of love, rest in peace, Spybot. I like the fact that the one brother, Dathmerian brother, takes down a bunch of stormtroopers, once again going to the body count, but also, realizes he's done, so he takes them out. The Mandos sort of have a moment, sort of those generic, ultramarine, very vanilla type, Mandos, and then, even with Rook, everybody else. Yeah, and I do kind of like that where everybody kind of gets their little moment on this. And, the last one, when it finally goes down and sinks and they get across and the Inquisitors are there, that was a great sequence. I think that, Spybot, getting killed and things like that, and the others just kind of show that it wasn't without cost.
And every single leap is somewhat transitional in a way. The fact that the two sort of ancillary characters, Two Boots, and what's the little dude's name? I keep thinking Voltaire, but no, it's not Voltaire.
I always think I hear
Spiro?
Mario. Yeah,
Mario. Yeah. Well, if only we had a way to access information. I guess we'll just have to go to a different center of the universe and figure that out. The father and son go across and have a heart-to-heart. Lawson confesses, I haven't always been there for you, but he says, at least we get to be together now. There's something so authentic and beautiful because that's not necessarily a bad dad. He's not a great dad because he's not there. I mean, you have to be honest about that. But he was a workaholic. We don't know his situation with how he feels about what happened with his wife. She went to the Empire. That's got to cause a strain. It obviously did. But there's still a moment on top of this acid, which there has to be some symbolism there. Come on, Dr. Cass, looking at you, buddy, to get across. But when the two Jedi go across, they use the skiff and they react defensively, and they get across with skill and agility and grace. But there's just something that it just has to happen in that fashion. When Maul does it, it's this the judge from Italy gave him a 10 for that incredible leap. It looks like he's going to die when the Inquisitor throws their helicopter blade at him, and the way he flips and moves around and the way he lands, almost like he's posing. It just shows sort of an arrogance to him. And there's like a chest puffing moment. And I think it's pretty cool. I think you can tell a lot about the characters just through that act itself.
I want to. You threw a gauntlet, so I want to accept the gauntlet and say what I was thinking about from literature primarily, and maybe it's just because there's a little movie coming out this summer. But I was thinking of the Odyssey and the epic tradition, and when our heroes go into the underworld. Each of the epic heroes in the kind of primary cycles go to the underworld, often to get a boon or a piece of wisdom from somebody. And I would say, the symbolism to me struck me as the river Styx, right? Which is the river of the dead, made up, and you're supposed to pay a cost, right? And in Greek mythology, it's very literal. You need 2 shillings, or not shillings, but 2 coins to get across with the boatman to get into the underworld. And so here I was thinking, where are we headed? Are we headed to go get some wisdom? Are we headed to go somewhere deeper and darker? Because there was certainly a cost, and Greg just illuminated all the team members who were lost in this moment. And so I then would say, I'm still stuck, and this is not necessarily a question, but please pick it up if you both want it, which is, I'm stuck if this is going to be Devon's story or if this is going to be Maul's story overall. And it feels to me like they are on parallel journeys together, and I think it's a little more attractive to look towards Devon's story because we don't know where it's going, whereas Maul, we have a couple data points and we know exactly where it ends. So I think, Maul is still the titular character, and he still seems to be in the lead of this show. And so to place him in the traditional kind of hero's position as you go and cross into the underworld, and then what follows is dripping with symbolism of lost cultures, right? We don't get, Vader is that. Sorry, we haven't gotten to that in this episode, but Vader's coming. And so Vader is a fallen hero, right? We are seeing the afterlife of a hero who learned a terrible lesson, or maybe hasn't fully learned it yet. And then they are, traversing these ruins. And I had a funny moment where I was like, we've never seen something like this in Star Wars. And I was like, oh, wait, A New Hope has some ruins, has some temples in it, and that's been around for a minute or two, maybe 50 years almost. So, but it really feels like we are in this kind of fallen world in some ways in the second episode. And I'm interested to see if you both think we learned some important lessons, some boons we're going to take back to society, or did we learn some terrible lessons? I'm not sure yet.
Oh, I think terrible. I mean, the problem with this series has to be, it's hard to tell a story where the main character is a villain, because villains don't really grow and change necessarily, at least not to the way that we would prescribe them to change. So what you said there just made me think about this. If we take the metaphor of the river Styx, which I love, and instead of water, we have acid, right? So what is supposed to be pure and life-giving is actually destructive. Well, so is anger. So is Maul's purpose for Devon. It's not altruistic. It is to corrupt her and to consume her in his own way, to use her as a weapon to kill Darth Sidious. Not life-giving. And by the way, the guy at the end of this little tale was this incredible hero who fell from grace to become, of course, Darth Vader himself. So much like the water turned to acid, these good people, the pure Zabrak from Dathomir, who's corrupted and abused and becomes, Maul. Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader. Devon, a good Padawan with a lot of promise and purpose, who ends up getting corrupted. A father who does make a change and becomes more about not worrying about his problems, but worrying about his son. He loses his life later, of course, in chapter 10. So it's all sort of supplanted by, what do we learn? We learn that when you go down this road, when you go down this path, all you're going to find is something that eats away from the goodness that is within.
Well said.
I love that.
Let's just talk about Darth Vader. I want to ask you both. I've got a story. I want to ask you both. Walk me through, while you're watching this, leading up to it. Rootcast is sucked away. I'm going to go on patrol. Sure, go ahead. What could possibly go wrong? Just a miss right there. Tell me, Greg, McLaughlin, your reaction and when you first realized what was happening. Just walk me through it.
I do love the fact that I wasn't spoiled. And I think that, it's a sign of the times that the first reaction sometimes gets to be a bit guarded, right? You talk about like getting off of, don't be on social media. Don't do this. I don't even like sometimes seeing the description of the episode or the preview. I'm like, I don't want to see anything, or the recaps. I really want to be surprised, because I remember how much of I was surprised when, Vader's reveal in Empire Strikes Back, spoiler, that he is Luke's father. And so I cherish every time I'm kind of surprised, and I really enjoyed it. At also the same time, you start to go, okay, we've pulled the Vader card. All right, how is he going to be used? And so you kind of go into almost a bit of a protection mode, because these are, they're not beloved characters to the rest of their galaxy, but they are beloved characters to us. And they take us back to, a very, when we were young and we saw either Vader or someone become Vader, depending upon how old you are. But you know that the stuff's about to get real when Vader shows up. And there is a sense of, it's thrilling. It's a little scary. It's a little like, uh-oh. So there's a lot of emotions going on at the same time. And I guess that's what happens to us now at this point in our fandom.
So it blew you away.
Yes.
Yes. And
it's a much more succinct way of saying it. Yes.
No. I just think that, I love how you said it, because there's so much that goes through your head when you're seeing this moment that is just something you probably think you can only dream about. I mean, the only time that Maul and Vader really faced each other was in a comic book before Disney sort of took the reins and everything became canonical. So, and it was even in like a dream sequence anyway. Dr. Cass, what about you? Walk us through when you first realized what was happening and kind of how you felt.
Yeah, well, so my opening word was gobsmacked for just this reason. And in some ways now, in hindsight, it feels like the most obvious choice of all. Like, why not get two of the most iconic movie characters in this very iconic franchise and put them on screen together? So when I describe myself as a Star Wars fan, I use this label that I at least pretend I coined, but I think it existed before me, which is I'm a child of the dark times. So I am too young to have seen the OT in theaters, and I discovered it on home video. And then I was, I think I was about 16 when Phantom Menace came out, which was great and awe-inspiring for me, but also felt like I was a little too old in some ways for it. So I will say that when Darth Vader appears and they start interacting, I immediately kind of went back to that theater in '99 and imagined myself thinking about a time and place where these two characters could get together. And I like your reference to that comic, Dan, because I sat there doing that same mental math. I'm like, where are we in this? Like, how has this happened before? Did we at all anticipate this? And I thought this absolutely delivered on the kind of incredible promise of putting these two characters together for the first time. And I had a question related to this, but it would have been another silly question. So I will frame it instead as saying that I think the most masterful part of this to me was the fact that this was a duel between the OT style lightsaber fight and the PT style lightsaber fight. That you got the flipping and the twirling that we associate with Yoda and Darth Maul, and then you just get the undeniable power of Darth Vader looking at times just like he did in Empire. And I thought that was just masterfully well done to kind of mash up these two eras of fandom all at once. And yes, it made this child of the dark times very, very happy, because it does feel like it was made for us.
Doesn't it? It so absolutely does. I use scintillating as my word, because as we're leading up to this and we're getting into the darkness and Root Cass goes ahead to scout, there's a brief moment where Devin apologizes to Maul for the loss of his friends. He doesn't even make any kind of a reaction. He's just looking ahead. I don't think any of them know what's happening, but Docky does. Docky senses something. And then through the mist, you hear this noise. And at first, and even when I knew the second time I watched it, even though I knew what was happening, it still sounded like some sort of a creature. And then you hear this, which has to be the sound of someone being choked through the Force. And then when he walked out, like I've as you both know, I've babbled incessantly about forcing my brain not to speculate. When I realized it was him, when it was Darth Vader, my mouth, and this is an audio podcast, so you can't see, but I started going, my mouth started slowly opening like I was a Jack in the Box in reverse. And I kept going, no, No. Oh my gosh. I was so happy. It was so thrilling in the way that they have the spotlight on him. And then all of a sudden, the red lightsaber hums on, and it's got a very distinct hum to it, a very distinct, beautiful, ominous tone. And his helmet glows this reddish, nightmarish tint. And then you get the credits, and I thought, can you imagine if I had to wait a week until chapter 10? I wish I would have. It was just, this series has been really good about cliffhanger endings, and this tops them all. So let's just jump into chapter 10. I'm ready for a letter grade. And any last minute thoughts or things you want to bring up, feel free to do so. Greg McLaughlin, go ahead. Give us a letter grade for Strange Allies and any last minute thoughts you want to bring up.
Ooh, I'm gonna go with B+ because I do like, the lead ups. These episodes, the penultimate or the build up are generally, I think I've been conditioned that they're pretty good, and it's sometimes it's always hard for the finale to kind of recover from that. But I like the build up. I like the fact that that you really don't know until the very end, and then they kind of put that amazing cliffhanger and shock in there after they've struggled to get across that river of toxic waste. And so I think it was very well done. Of course, it's hard to lose a Rook cast, especially knowing that Vanessa Marshall, it's been fun to see her back in, and all the voices and things like that. But you go, at some point it starts to make sense when you start to peel this back, because the only way we're going to get even greater episodes is we're going to have to really start revolving after around a smaller group of people. And so they, like a good Agatha Christie novel, they're just going to have to go one by one until it gets down to, and then there were none. But anyway, that's I'm going to go with B+ on this one.
What a great explanation of your rubric. Love that. Okay, Dr. Cass.
As I know all too well, in anticipation of my emails I'll be receiving next week, B+ make no one happy. So I'm going to A- for this one. And admittedly, a lot of that is that big reveal at the end. And Dan, I didn't have to wait a week, but I will say I was planning to watch one, and then I had some grading to get done. So I was gonna, I'll watch one and I'll take a little break. And then, of course, as you just narrated, that ending happened. I was like, well, I guess the grading will have to wait a little longer and hit play again right away, certainly. So I think it was thrilling, and again, the sequence we talked about, which is kind of the bulk of the episode, meant that this wasn't a throwaway on the way to the finale. It was itself a good, solid episode and gave you a lot to chew on. And so I'm going A-. And, we jumped I've missed some Pringles ratings on our show, but I will say that I've been down in what, if we're converting Pringles cans to GPA, I've been down in the kind of B- range to the B range, and this was a big jump up for me. I think these last two, starting with this one, really jumped me up into the top tier of quality here, because I really enjoyed these two episodes.
And that's why I'm going to give this an A. I'll give it a low A, but it's still an A. It's not an A-. I can't give it less than A because of the ending. That ending is one of my favorite endings in a Star Wars story. I don't remember if I said that earlier on this show or on the Rebel Base Card podcast, but it was pretty spectacular. And as you said, this is not a filler that gets us to the end. There's some great pacing. There's some great character stuff here. There's some great examples of sacrifice through the death of Mirian. And you see different lines crossed, the Jedi working with a former Sith. Maul completely towing the line, not even showing his cards, even though Two Boots has this great, I don't know if you should trust this Shadow Lord. I don't know how he said it, but there's such even for Two Boots, there's this self-realization, which is pretty rare for Two Boots, of this probably isn't the best idea we've ever had. It's got a great charm about it, and with a lot of beautiful symbolic things that we've talked about. So I'll give Strange Allies an A, but now we're going to jump into The Dark Lord. It was simply called Finale for the longest time. When I got this a preview at this. They sent us the first 8 episodes, so I binged them, and they got better and better. The first few episodes, I wasn't sure how much I was. I was of course going to watch it, but I was like, okay. But then it got better and better. These last 2, phenomenal. The Dark Lord. We'll start with you, Greg McLaughlin. One word for the Dark Lord and overall initial reactions to it.
I'm going to say transition.
Okay.
Because I do feel that perhaps 2 characters are forced to kind of make in their own head a leap to a place where they didn't think they were going to be going. I think Devin has decided to, join forces with Maul, but I do think our sleeper cell, Riley, is going to be making that a very similar decision, not to go back with his mother or not to stay there too long, but to avenge or enact revenge. So I do think that we have 2 characters that are transitioning from a life that they led, whether perfect or not, to something they will be leading that is going to take them in not so great places.
Very, very true. Dr. Cass?
I was torn. I'm going to go with, based on the Darth Vader of it all, my secondary choice, I'm just going to sneak both in, was Relentless, because this did feel like a relentless episode and the relentless pacing of it. But what I really am going to stick with is ominous, because what I'm going to remember about this episode, as great as the action was, I'm left thinking, just spinning all these dreams in my head about what could this be. And my daughter is going through a Frozen moment right now, and the second Frozen movie, I believe, has this song "Into the Unknown," and that was resonating in my head, because I think that's what's the most ominous about this, is we've never seen a Star Wars story end here, and we're going into the unknown, where the familiar structures of a crew on a ship are kind of here, but it's a crew unlike anything we've ever seen before. And I think, Greg McLaughlin, you just alluded to, like, I have a lot of questions about where Riley's going. I have a lot of questions, about where Devin and Maul are going. And, there is even this kind of dangling thread of now you owe Dryden Voss a favor. And that's a gentleman I wouldn't want to owe a favor to at all. So I'm seeing this going dark places and interesting places and places that are in the unknown. So ominous.
I like that. And I actually have some breaking news here for you. I can tell you where Devin and Maul are going. They're going to Burger King to get a Mandalorian crown, like Corey Clubb and Ross Holloway and Greg and all of our friends. Yeah. My word is spectacular. I could go a lot of ways to describe sort of the power of the ominous, the ferocity of Vader, but this is a spectacular episode. This is everything you want from Star Wars animation. Darth Vader versus Maul in a lightsaber duel. Yes, you're not imagining things. Darth Vader versus Maul in a lightsaber duel. And it's for almost the entire episode. It's everything we've ever imagined. And dare I say, it surpassed my expectations, because I never let myself think this was going to happen. And it did. And it was beautiful. And I hope it's just round 1. I have a number of questions about this, and I don't want to make the podcast too much longer, but I think there's important things to talk about. I want to throw this out to you guys. Of course, we're talking a lot about symbolism. I love symbolism and metaphor and all the things that us English teacher types like to talk about. So every time throughout this series, especially in Chapter 10, and a little bit in 9, but a lot in Chapter 10, every time Maul gets weakened, it's always in his right leg. Is there anything symbolic about him getting continually struck on his cybernetic right leg, how he reacts to it, the fact that it keeps happening? I don't even know if it's even a fair question to spring on you guys. I have a couple of ideas about it, but it's really interesting to me, because they could go with an arm, they could have went with his other leg. They could, but it's always right in that thigh. Always right there. I mean, at first blush, this is the leg that he leads with when he attacks. So he's moving that right foot forward, so to speak. And he doesn't take on a defensive posture like Docky and go backwards. He's always stepping forward, even against Darth Vader, when he doesn't necessarily know what Vader is capable of. So it could just be something as simple as that's his aggressive nature, and his aggressive nature is the reason he has cybernetic legs in the first place, and he's not fully organic, much like Vader himself, by the way. But I just think it's really interesting, and I'm sure there's more to talk about with it.
I was quickly Googling to make sure I had this right. So what does Henry Jones Sr. say? I suddenly remembered my Charlemagne. I suddenly remembered my Latin, and that sinister, of course, is based on the Latin word for left-handed, right? And so there is, with my love of my dear Southpaw friends, whoever you are out there, I do think there's a way in which the right side, or especially the right hand, is more leaning towards goodness, right? And the left is darker. And now I just feel bad, like I'm shaming my left-handed friends. I love you all dearly, but so I do wonder if there's something to the fact that, yes, we are talking about legs, and so it's not exactly that, but is this, kind of chipping away at whatever goodness might have been in Maul, whatever, if there was any left at this time. Now, I do think there's a base level where you have to remind the audience who maybe stepped away from Star Wars for a while that these are cybernetic legs. And as we've talked about already tonight, that we need to hobble Darth Maul, because we're not going to tonight in these episodes answer the question of who is truly the stronger Sith Lord, although I think we know the answer. But we're going to make sure it's not an exactly fair fight within that. So those are the two that come to mind. But I also want to say, I thought the wound to his thigh was pretty gnarly, right? Like it was a chunk in a way you couldn't really do with a flesh leg. But even at that, it was not like a clean slice, like when Maul cuts the ATST like Walker, it's a very clean slice, and this is very jagged. And I think the brutality of it is perhaps the emotional resonance that came to mind most of all. McLaughlin, are you left-handed?
No, I am. I am a righty, although I can do many. I'm a little ambidextrous, but not that much. I do think that Dan has a lot on it, that just because of the style of the combat, I think your right leg would probably be more forward. Although I do think that, it's not only interesting that I think that you could see he gets weakened every time. And so I think it's nice that you do see damage being done, even that little bit that Vader gets. It does show that it's not just two guys living out a PC game fantasy. But also that it's interesting to see him grimace, all through the series. When he's been injured, it looks like it's making him feel pain. Now, is it also maybe a shadow pain that he tries to draw anger from? That's maybe trying to put a source there. But it's interesting that he mimics, because you'd think otherwise a cybernetic leg would just, all right, I've got to go. But maybe it's how it's attached. It gives him pain, much like what Vader's armor in some ways is supposed to agonize him enough to keep him angry. But it does show the fact when they are facing off towards the end that Maul clearly isn't capable of taking out Vader by himself. He is going to need help in any constant changing, shade of characters. So he's going to need more than just him, and the wounds keep bringing that fact forward.
And two things. We hadn't talked about it yet, but even though it was in Chapter 9, yes, that sequence, the Chris Farley style of questioning that you brought up earlier, when he takes down that walker, was that incredible. Just the way he does it, and just the cool factor was off the charts. Vader in this, let's be clear, while he may briefly use two hands, for the most part against a Jedi Master, a very capable Padawan, and one of the baddest dudes in the galaxy, he uses one hand.
Yeah.
He uses one hand. Because he's Darth Vader. I said this, I think I said this on your show, Greg. But to me, this whole thing with Vader, it's a good challenge, but this is really a workout. Vader is not worried about losing. I think he is enjoying this as much as Darth Vader can enjoy anything. And that's ultimately why they escape, because it's not often you see Maul run from a fight. I mean, he's the bully. He's the tough guy on the prison block. But when it's Darth Vader, that is not the case. And I thought it was such a beautiful balance to give both of these guys their props, their clout, their aura. Insert cool guy slang here. They both carry themselves with the air of supremacy and power without showing any weakness, but it's also skillfully done to a degree that it's clear that Darth Vader is the alpha of alphas, while Maul is no slouch himself. Is he the weaker one? Of course he is. Everybody's the weaker one to Darth Vader. But the fact that he represents himself the way that he does, of course with some cowardly stuff at the end, I think is a testament to the creators in this series.
Agreed.
Well, and I it brought to mind times when there was a trend for a little while where fans would kind of CG up what the A New Hope duel would look like if you made it today with the different technology and so on. And those are always cool. I'm not diminishing anybody's creativity. But at the same time, I thought it was a reminder, like, Darth Vader doesn't need to be fancy and do those moves. He can just kind of, it's actually, and it's reminiscent of Maul's true end in Rebels, where it's like the stillness and the decisiveness of the small moves matters much more than the kind of frills. And again, as I already said, I really thought of it as like the OT lightsaber fighting style Strikes Back, right? It's like, this is, I think we're still much more towards the Revenge of the Sith than we are towards A New Hope. But it makes me wonder, you could come up with lots of story reasons. Oh, he's not used to the armor yet. He's not used to the cybernetic implants, and he's still figuring out what it is. But what comes through is just the absolute power of, being still and being decisive.
Right. Do either of you have some questions you'd like to throw our way?
I would say that I was a little... here's something. I was curious about Dryden Voss's boss, the person that he wants to remove from the equation. I am not familiar with that name. Normally, if this was my show, I'd be leaning in on my canon co-host here to help me out to see if this person has shown up before. But my question, I guess, would be: do we know who this person is? Has he shown up before? I'd love to find out more before he's probably today.
I'm going to answer and then yes and you with a question from my list. So to my knowledge, this is a new character and not somebody we've met before. There's not a lot developed about Dryden Voss outside of Solo. The history of Crimson Dawn becomes much richer after Solo, and we get a lot more with Kira later through to the Outlaws video game, and then into Charles Soule's excellent War of the Bounty Hunters, and there's 3 titles there, Crimson Reign and Crimson so on. So there's a lot more to come after the fact, but I guess my yes and would be, I actually don't know if I had the hierarchy of Crimson Dawn correctly in my head from Solo. So when I watched the end of Solo, I assume Dryden Voss reports to Maul.
That's correct.
And so is that very clear in Solo?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I think so. And this is how we figure out how this has transpired, because it seems that we're leading towards Maul's going to help Voss, and then he's going to be Maul. And he's like, yeah, I know you think you're in charge, buddy, but it's actually me. So that's how I think it's going to happen, because this is a new name. We didn't know about Dryden Voss's voice before. It comes through. And again, this is because I've been writing this Build Your Own Darth Vader 400,000 word epic for 2 years. I've done a lot of research on these characters, actual research, not just Googling, kids, where Dryden Voss is in charge of Crimson Dawn, but he's really just the figurehead, and Maul pulls the strings from the shadows. So this must be how we're getting there.
That makes sense.
And that makes me very excited. I think in early episodes of our show about this show, I noted Maul's timeline is pretty convoluted from start to finish, and there's a lot of these rises and falls, especially the literal one in Phantom Menace, I suppose. So it is a little confusing how often he kind of rises in a criminal organization. But I'm just going to say that's exciting storytelling to me too, and I think there is some DNA here, perhaps not literal, but some DNA back to when George was planning something like a level 1313, he saw a lot of opportunity in telling stories about the criminal syndicates and the underworld. And I think, that dream show never really came together. Rick McCallum is still out there saying like, I was working on it, I was close, but they couldn't get the budgets to work quite right. And so I love that, I just imagine George and Dave around the water cooler, and George shared little ideas, and some of this is going to come through, which is exciting to think about.
Absolutely. So you've got Phantom Menace, you've got Clone Wars, being rescued, forming the Shadow Collective, taking over the Pikes, etc., taking out Obi-Wan Kenobi, being in charge of the Mandalorians. Then we've got the Siege of Mandalore, and then somehow we don't know where the time limit is. We're suddenly in this area with Maul, Shadow Lord. A little bit more time goes by. Then we go to Star Wars Rebels. So there is Maul's arc. Okay. And it's very convoluted. But
I think sorry, there's also another, I think it's not technically canon anymore, but there was a comic, I think at the very end of Dark Horse, where he rose and fell again immediately after Mandalore.
I'm counting that in the story, and that is canon.
Okay, cool.
Yes,
thank you.
That is absolutely canon, because those are unpublished, uncreated Clone Wars episodes that still take place before this series.
Right.
So if that helps to kind of make it. And again, if I haven't been like spending a lot of time on Maul recently, I always tell students, and you know this too, Greg, the best way to learn something is to teach it and to write about it. And that's the only reason I know, because it's very dizzying. Do you have a question for us, Dr. Cass?
So the only question left on my sheet that is unanswered is a little more in the vein of our show than your show. And I want to be very clear. I'm not asking you for expectations, but like, I don't want you to raise your hopes in ways that can't be founded, but like, what if you had like hopes for this show? Would it be that this is a small story? Would it be that this could go on and on and on? I mean, I think we're all of the right age where the Clone Wars seemed like it was over like 3 times, and every time there's a little more to that story, I think we all embrace it and welcome it. And so I guess, not asking you to speculate on specific events, but like, what do you both want from this show? Like, how do you see us going forward? Are we talking about this in season 10 in 5 years or more than that, or is this going to be something more like a Bad Batch, like a smaller show?
I love that question, and I think I can walk that tightrope. I love this. Greg, what do you think?
I like the fact that it's somewhat small stakes. I think, when we go back to Vader's entrance, whenever you get on that radar, that a clock is ticking. But I do like the fact that we are seeing, like, just that moment between Riley and Devin in the room where, it's just like they're just normal. They're normal teenagers for a moment. And I like the fact that this whole series has allowed Maul to breathe. Everything from his calisthenics to his vision quest, for lack of a better word, to letting some of these characters really get fleshed out. And I would love to see, I'm greedy, and I'd love to see multiple seasons. I think Bad Batch is probably more, it could be the norm rather than sort of the exception. But, part of me really wants to get to Malachor, because I'm still not happy over not finding out what happened on Malachor before. It'd be interesting to end it there. That'd be for me. But I do think that I like Dryden Voss being in it. Boy, would I love to see Paul Bettany doing it. But either way, I think this is fascinating, because I just think there's a lot of things you could play with, and it could just really go to, like, you could bring in make Solo 2 happen, folks. You could really get there. and that could be a lot of fun. And it's the artistic style is awesome. This is the Clone Wars animation on steroids. They're really at a great place, and they could just keep making this, and I think I'd be very happy, because we know where Maul ends up with, but we don't know Devon's full story, and I think she's proven that she's an interesting character, and as some of the other ones, I'd like to see this show keep going.
My hope is also that it ends sort of like Andor into Rogue One, where it ends on Malachor and here comes Ezra Bridger. I think that'd be awesome because at some point Maul goes a little loopy again before he gets here. I think 2-3 seasons tops is more than enough. I think the most important thing to me is I am very satisfied with the meal. I don't need seconds and thirds. I think stories have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end to be poignant, not pungent. I don't want to have so much stuff thrown my way that it kind of clouds or muddies it. I mean, I'm very honest about the fact that I'm to the point with Star Wars comics that it's so beyond the credulity of fiction that Luke, Han, and Leia can have this many adventures and not be dead. I have a very hard time with that, keeping track of that. I don't want to do that here. I still don't think Maul is a particularly rich character. I think he's fascinating. I think he's super cool. I don't think he's particularly deep, and I don't think he has to be. This is, again, a story about a villain, a really cool, compelling villain with a lot of interesting things to offer us narratively. But as I always say, he ain't Hamlet. He doesn't have to be Hamlet. But that being said, I only say that to point out that I think a couple of seasons max, ending us on Malachor, I think would be the sweet spot personally. Mm-hmm. What about you, Dr. Cass?
I think that is right. And especially, I can't turn off my long take review head where we follow Hollywood and the ins and outs of business. And in the streaming moment we're at, right. I certainly wouldn't want to get my hopes up for a really long-term expensive show in particular. I don't think I at least am not aware of the budgets of these animated shows. Based on the average fare my children watch on these streaming services, these look like they cost a lot more money and are an investment. And I think Star Wars and Disney is willing to do that because they can make the merchandise and they can kind of keep the whole machine humming. So I'm going to answer the question slightly differently, which is to say, I really hope, if I had a hope, and this is not a prediction, and I'm not going to say the name that's out there on the internet that a lot of us know from Legends, but I will say that I really want Devon to be a long-term Star Wars character. I think the surprise for me from Clone Wars was, of course, I think for everybody, the character that Ahsoka became, and I think Devon has that that potential. So I completely agree with what you just said, Dan. We know Maul. We kind of know where Maul's ending up. We kind of get that. But there's no reason that, we can't find a way to keep Devon's story going across different iterations in different places. And it would be even cool if that ended up being something to do with these live action shows. But I'm going to be very selfish, Dan, and throw it back to you, because you and I are very similar in the same way that we found Ahsoka very unsatisfying because it didn't tell a complete story. And I think some people could throw this show back at us that, there's a lot going here that's left unsettled, but I don't at all feel the same way I did after the Ahsoka finale. And it sounds like you're the same way. So can you articulate why? What's the main difference there?
That's a fabulous question, and you are exactly right. The difference, I think, is that this is already predicated on the fact that at the end of this, you already know where Maul's going. We don't really know where Ahsoka's going because her story is still being told. That's part of the problem. Ahsoka's a good guy. Ahsoka's a very rich, detailed character. And as Star Wars characters go, she's fairly profound and deep, I think. So there's a lot of room for growth, and we don't get that growth. It's a bit like the whole purpose of this, your character is actually just sort of, now she's stuck. Maul, Thrawn was stuck, now she's stuck. Oh, well, it's okay. Let's have a very inauthentic reunion between Ezra and Hera. that it felt empty because there wasn't a lot of heart in those last few episodes. With this, I wasn't expecting hope. I wasn't expecting heart. I was expecting to see Maul do some cool stuff. I didn't expect I would be so taken with some of the supporting cast, especially Lawson. A Lawson times 1,000. Lawson lives. Let's get those chants going. No, I don't want him to come back. His sacrifice was beautiful. But I think that is the main reason. This set out what it wanted to do, and it kind of exceeded it. Ahsoka, to me, and I don't mean this to be negative, but I feel like Ahsoka's direction didn't really have a lot of direction. Putting pieces in place does not a story make that needs to be told, and I wasn't convinced that Ahsoka's story needed to be told besides bringing Ezra and Thrawn back. I think there's plenty of it that was cool and that worked well, but if you took the first 2 episodes and the last 2 episodes and just kept the middle part, I think I would have been much more satisfied with that stew. What do you think?
Greg, you take first on that.
Oh, as far, well, you know, I think I've gone on record. Ahsoka's higher on my list, but I cannot. It's hard to justify how the parts are put together. I mean, there was a lot of great Lego pieces. Creatively, they made a pretty interesting thing. But you're right. I think there was a better story there, and you know, I think
Baylan and Shin is a great example of that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, but Baylan and Shin stories, not only are they not resolved, they just sort of pause.
Right.
And you're saying, okay, well, why are they even here? And when you're setting up a story just purely to get you to buy the next book, and you have no interest in wrapping up what's going on, that's where I struggle. That's why I didn't like the Hunger Games, by the way. Yeah.
No.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, and also I think a product of its era of maybe not enough episodes, you know. And you're right. I think to get to Thrawn, like I said, it's hard when you're like a huge Rebels fan not to kind of see this through a Rebels season 5 pair of glasses. Satisfying, yes.
Which I've also always bristled at that.
Right. And, you know, it's kind of, it reminds me of the Burger King analogy. I'm like, I'm going through a lot of awful food to get to my Mando toys. And so maybe in this case, the ends don't justify, you know, the ends don't justify the means. So
I love their food.
I was going to say, there goes the endorsement deal.
Yeah, come on.
But
I will just throw in, go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say that, you know, yes, I think you could also, you know, I think this has been a very good use of Maul, a character we kind of know the beginning and the ending, and has and much like Vader has to have sort of a consistent type tone, but there's a lot around that is you know, Devin's story I think is really shining and going through, and even to a certain extent Riley's, and until he falls off. If he didn't show up in season 2, go back and discredit what I said here. But I do think that the story of her, and hopefully, like I said, going up against Vader, you got a tough road, kid. Good luck with that. Hope it works out for you, because it doesn't for a lot of other folks. But we'll see. But I think that they have an easier time with their season 2 maybe than Ahsoka. You know, Ahsoka season 2, which I think it'll be much better for those who stick around. But let's hope they've learned some lessons. Hey, there's a new boss of Lucasfilm. That much is certain. So, you know, hey, you can only rubber stamp yourself there, Dave. So go for it.
I will just say what you both said in a slightly different way is that Ahsoka felt like that season was Act 2. And there were a whole bunch of missing pieces from Act 1. What? Sabine trained with Ahsoka? What?
And now she knows history? The Force?
So, so all of that made it like feel incomplete on that side, and then on the other side. So I think, you know, this felt like a very logical point to pick up the story. Of course, something has happened to these Jedi and all that, but it does feel to me like we had a clear starting point, and I agree with Dan. Like it could really link up directly to Malachor or go wherever they want, but I think I felt like I got a complete meal, even if it's only the first season.
I like that. And the Act One thing is missing his gap. This wasn't in media res. This was what the hey? Yeah, exactly. I love that. Well, you know what? We could talk on and on about this, and we certainly could. But let's give our letter grade and last minute thoughts on The Dark Lord. Dr. Cass, why don't we start with you?
A grade I don't get to give because colleges don't have it. A+. Absolutely a stellar finale, and I loved it all. I certainly, if people look at our archived shows, I went into this not that enthusiastic. I didn't really understand why Darth Maul needed his own show, or excuse me, Maul needed his own show. Mm-hmm. And I'm converted. I should have trusted the creatives, and I did, because I came along for the journey, and I really enjoyed it. So next season can't come soon enough, although it would be nice to podcast a little less.
Greg, what about you?
I think I am also going to go with an A, kind of much like when you kind of reward Return of the King for all the movies. I do think that it capped off
A or A plus?
Huh?
A or A plus?
No, just an A.
Just A. Okay.
Just an A. I think it stuck the landing. I think it did what it needed to do. I think it complemented the end of the season. Like I said, I had small issues with maybe not Paul Bettany being there, or maybe I would have liked to seen Vader say a couple things, or something like that. But I don't think that my little things ding it. I think it did exactly what it needed to do, and I think it was a great show.
Love it. Well, I'm gonna give it an A+ as well. Like you, Dr. Cass, I was not quite certain that this was a story that needed to be told. That's always a very important to me. I need a story to add to my mythology, not just be a part of the mythology. And it won me over, but not at all because of the titular character, because the side characters, the partners with Maul, both in his organization and the people who are his antagonists, who we would view as protagonists, especially Captain Lawson himself. They were compelling, and I liked that they took a twist on Maul, and it wasn't just about hack slash smashy. I mean, it was about how can I control things. So we don't see him through 10 episodes do a ton of evil acts that are overt. There certainly is the Iago-ness of it all with the manipulation. There's absolutely there, and that's very evil. Let's be clear on that. But the violent nature of Maul doesn't really come through till the end, but it's for a good reason, because he's facing the most evil, frightening character, arguably, in Star Wars, Darth Vader. His master might have something different to say about that, but he's not around right now to listen. Although if you are listening, Darth Cities, be sure to like and subscribe, of course, to all of the things. Yeah, so I loved it. I thought, yeah, exactly. There's the soundbite. It's great because we get to see the ultimate Darth Vader versus Maul in a very satisfying way. That's the entire episode, and you're left wanting more in the best way possible because it feels satisfying. And that, I think, is why this season has been so enjoyable for me.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is... yes.
But I want you, all of you, to let us know what you think about Maul Shadow Lord. And if you haven't already done so, please go back and listen to part 1 of this conversation on the Rebel Base Card podcast. Speaking of that, gentlemen, it's been so awesome to learn from you, to laugh with you, to talk about this fabulous series. Please let us know where we can find each of you and what's going on with the Rebel Base Card podcast. Dr. Cass, why don't we start with you?
I'm easier. I'm at Ion Cannon on Instagram, and that's almost it these days. So EYEONCANON. And people can check me out with former Ahsoka commentator Jen Subchakjai Bankard over on the Long Take Review podcast, where we are entering summer movie season, and we got a Star Wars movie, and we got a Spielberg movie, and we got a Spider-Man movie. So it's going to be a great summer, and we'd love for people to join us and hear our commentary on those films. Thanks for having me, Dan. It's a sincere pleasure every single time.
The pleasure's all mine. I always love to get a chance to talk to you. Can't wait to hang out with you at Celebration next year. Greg, what about you, buddy? What's going on with that? Still, Greg has the best voice in all of Star Wars podcasting.
Well, first off, I just want to say thank you for having us both on. This was really fun, and to get a chance to talk about this series. We've had a really great May the 4th. It was really fun to get not only with Free Comic Book Day, but also to get all of Card Squadron together and talk about everything that's just happening this month in getting ready for Mando. And if you want to reach out to the program, you can connect on X, Blue Sky, on Instagram. You can look at your podcast feed in Apple Podcasts and Spotify at Rebel Base Card. Also doing a little bit of writing on Fantha Tracks. I was fortunate enough to be in the review pool, and I still have to put in my review for this one to get in there before the deadline ends. I think I know what I'll be doing after this, but it's been fun to reconnect. Once again, it'll be great to see you next year at Star Wars Celebration and everybody. But it's going to be a fun time. There's a lot to do between now and then, and excited to be a part of it.
And just like that, our journey through the galaxy for today has come to a close. Thank you to Greg and Greg for joining me to discuss the last 2 episodes of Maul, Shadow Lord. What a spectacular series, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I want to thank you for listening to and supporting Coffee with Kenobi, where fans can come together to think, learn, and discuss this galaxy we all love. I'm so grateful you chose to spend part of your day with me. A special thank you to our official travel partner, MEI Travel and Mouse Fan Travel. Looking to plan your next magical vacation to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, or even a Disney cruise? Want to explore Galaxy's Edge or attend Star Wars Celebration? Becky Mankin and her team will get you there with a no-cost, no-obligation quote and the kind of peace of mind we all appreciate. Plus, this is a great time to talk to MEI Travel and Mouse Fan Travel to help you book your Star Wars Celebration hotel next year. Learn more at coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with your fellow Star Wars friends. You can find us on social media or visit coffeewithkenobi.com for articles, merch, and more ways to connect. Until next time, I'm Dan Zayer, and this is the podcast you're looking for. For all things Star Wars, news, reviews, videos, and more, head to our home base, coffeewithkenobi.com. Don't forget to join the CWK Cafe on Facebook at coffeewithkenobi.com/community, our family-friendly, spoiler-free group for all your Star Wars thoughts, comments, and conversation. This podcast is possible thanks to the incredible support of the CWK Alliance. Want to help keep the show brewing? For as little as $1 a month, you can join the CWK Alliance and get access to CWK Pour-Over, our exclusive weekly audio and video podcast. Learn more at coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance. And know this, 10% of your monthly contributions goes directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital. Want to connect? You can email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com. Follow me on X at Mr. Zayer, MRZEHR, Instagram, Threads, at DanZayrCWK, and Blue Sky. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can follow Coffee with Kenobi across social media on X, Instagram, Threads, Pinterest, and Blue Sky, and give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. If you want to send an email to the show, you can email us feedback at coffeewithkenobi.com. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you'll find over 700 videos, including past live shows, events, and this podcast. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really helps more Star Wars fans find our little corner of the galaxy. Do you need a speaker for your next event? Visit danzmedia.com. I love to discuss mythology, leadership, storytelling, or create something tailored to your audience. And finally, grab your CWK gear at coffeewithkenobi.com/shop and show your support in style.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along.